December 18, 1944, 11:47 p.m. Havoc, a 4-year-old German Shepherd weighing 90 pounds, stood beside Technical Sergeant Daniel Cole at Forward Fuel Depot 7, 3 miles east of Liège, Belgium. The depot held 840,000 gallons of gasoline in 17 cylindrical tanks. It supplied General Patton's Third Army during the Battle of the Bulge. Without it, armored columns would freeze in position within 48 hours. A German artillery fragment had punctured return line 4 earlier that evening. Gasoline pooled beneath tank number 4, the fullest tank, containing 87,000 gallons. At 11:46 p.m., the fuel film found a spark from a damaged electrical junction. A flame line, blue and narrow, began racing toward the tank's main valve at approximately 4 feet per second. 3,000 soldiers slept in barracks 300 yards downwind. 17 supply trucks sat parked alongside the tank perimeter. The medical tent held 42 wounded men. If tank number 4 exploded, the chain reaction would destroy the entire depot. Army protocol was absolute. No K9 asset crosses the red safety line during active fire conditions. Handlers who violated the regulation faced immediate court-martial. Dogs were censors, never firefighters. Havoc broke his leash at 11:47 p.m. and sprinted 20 feet through the flame path toward the emergency shutoff valve. Cole never gave the command. What happened in the next 18 seconds would rewrite every K9 emergency protocol in the European theater and cost Havoc most of the fur on his right flank. The depot supplied Patton's Third Army. Without it, armored columns would freeze in place within 48 hours. Temperature, -4 degrees Celsius. Wind from the Ardennes carried the smell of diesel and snow. Cole knew the safety manual. He'd read it 11 times. Section 7, Paragraph 3. No K9 asset crosses the red safety line during active fire conditions. Violation meant immediate court-martial. Dogs were censors, never firefighters. The red line ran across the concrete, 20 feet from the tank perimeter. Paint still wet from the morning application. Cole could see it from where he stood with Havoc. Beyond it, 17 cylindrical tanks held 840,000 gallons of gasoline. A German bombing run 2 days earlier had left shrapnel scattered across the depot. Maintenance crews worked in 12-hour shifts, pulling metal fragments from fuel lines. They'd found 43 pieces. The 44th piece, the one that mattered, was still embedded in return line 4. The Battle of the Bulge was 3 days old. Every hour, trucks arrived to fill tanks. Every hour, they left carrying fuel to Sherman tanks, half-tracks, supply vehicles. 3,000 men lived in barracks 300 yards downwind. The medical tent held 42 wounded. 17 supply trucks sat parked alongside the tank perimeter. Cole had memorized the consequences. Article 92. Failure to obey order or regulation. Maximum penalty. Dishonorable discharge. Forfeiture of all pay. Confinement for 2 years. For a dog handler who violated fire protocol and caused deaths, the penalty would be worse. Havoc was trained to detect leaks. His nose could identify gasoline vapor at concentrations below human detection threshold. He'd been taught to sit and bark when he smelled fuel outside containment lines. He'd been taught to retreat when fire appeared. He'd never been taught to enter fire. The protocol was clear. When flame appeared, handlers pulled dogs back to the outer perimeter. Fire teams moved forward. Dogs waited. Dogs watched. Dogs never crossed the red line. Cole had watched the training videos. He'd seen what happened when regulations were ignored. At a depot in North Africa, a handler had let his dog approach a smoking fuel truck. The truck exploded. The handler lost his left arm. The dog died instantly. Havoc stood beside him, 90 pounds of muscle and conditioning. The leash was damp from melted snow. Cole's hands were cold inside leather gloves. He could feel the dog's tension through the lead, a vibration that ran from collar to palm. The air smelled like gasoline. Not the clean smell from a pump, the raw smell. The smell of fuel where it wasn't supposed to be. Havoc was 4 years old. He'd been pulled from a municipal shelter in Camden, New Jersey in August 1941. The Army needed dogs who could work in noise and heat. They tested 300 animals. Havoc passed every test. He'd been selected for 3 traits: noise tolerance, heat resistance, and focus under stress. During testing, evaluators fired rifles next to his head. He didn't flinch. They put him in a room heated to 110 degrees Fahrenheit. He worked for 20 minutes without stopping. They surrounded him with distractions, food, other dogs, sudden movements. He ignored everything except the trainer's hand signals. Training lasted 6 months. Havoc learned to detect gasoline, diesel, oil, aviation fuel. He learned to differentiate between normal operational smells and leak smells. He learned to alert, sit, bark twice, hold position until the handler arrived. He learned to respond to gestures. A closed fist meant stay. An open palm meant come. A pointed finger meant search in that direction. Words were backup. The primary language was visual. Cole had worked with Havoc for 8 months. He'd learned the dog's signals. Ears forward meant focus on a specific point. Ears back meant uncertainty. A low growl, rare, meant immediate danger. A whine meant the dog wanted to move, but was holding position. The relationship was professional. Cole didn't keep Havoc in his barracks. The dog slept in the kennel with the other working dogs. But Cole knew Havoc's body language better than he knew most men's faces. He could read tension in the dog's shoulders. He could read intent in the angle of the dog's head. Havoc had alerted to 17 leaks in 8 months. Small leaks, cracked seals, loose fittings, damaged hoses. He'd found them before gauges registered pressure loss. He'd found them before human noses detected vapor. He'd saved the depot from 6 potential fires, but he'd never been near actual flame. Training used smoke machines and heat lamps. Conditioning taught recognition and retreat. The protocol was absolute. Detect, alert, withdraw, never approach, never engage. Cole had seen the conflict before. 3 weeks earlier, Havoc had alerted to a leak near Tank 7. The dog sat and barked as trained, but when the maintenance crew arrived with cutting torches, Havoc had pulled toward the work site. Cole held the leash. Havoc pulled harder. The dog's body vibrated with tension, muscles locked, breathing fast, eyes fixed on the torch flames. Cole had pulled him back to the outer perimeter. Regulation compliance. Havoc had whined for 5 minutes. Not a scared whine. A frustrated whine. The sound a tool makes when it's prevented from doing what it was built to do. Tonight, that same vibration ran through the leash. Havoc's nose pointed toward tank number 4. His ears were forward. His weight shifted toward his front legs, the stance that preceded motion. Cole tightened his grip. The leather was slick with condensation. His fingers ached from cold and tension. He could feel his heartbeat in his throat. Havoc's training said retreat from fire. Havoc's conditioning said respond to leaks. Something in the dog's wiring was trying to reconcile commands that contradicted each other. The shrapnel fragment in return line 4 had been there for 36 hours. Maintenance crews had missed it during inspection. It was small, maybe an inch long, wedged into a seam where 2 pipe sections joined. At 11:43 p.m., pressure in the line increased as pumps cycled fuel from tank number 4 to the distribution manifold. The shrapnel shifted. The pipe seam split. Gasoline began leaking through a crack 1/16 of an inch wide. The leak was thin, almost invisible. The fuel ran down the side of the pipe across 6 inches of concrete into a shallow depression filled with rainwater and mud. The gasoline floated on top of the water. It spread in a film, light, transparent, moving slowly toward a drainage channel. The channel ran 15 feet. At the end, there was a metal ladder bolted to the concrete. 2 days earlier, a maintenance worker had been welding a damaged railing. He'd finished the job. He'd turned off the torch. He'd left one thing behind, a small piece of striker flint, wedged between 2 ladder rungs. At 11:46 p.m., gasoline vapor reached the ladder. The spark came from an electrical junction box mounted to the ladder's base. The box controlled lighting for the catwalk. When the pump cycled on, current draw increased. A loose wire connection arced. The arc was small, barely visible, but it was enough. The gasoline vapor ignited. The flame was narrow and blue. It ran along the vapor trail like a lit fuse. Speed, approximately 4 feet per second. Direction, straight toward tank number 4. Tank number 4 held 87,000 gallons. It was 94% full, the highest fill level in the depot. If the flame reached the tank's main valve assembly, the heat would compromise the seal. Fuel would spray. The spray would ignite. The explosion would destroy the tank. The explosion would ignite the tanks beside it. Chain reaction. Total depot loss. 17 supply trucks sat parked 30 feet from the tank perimeter. The medical tent was 200 feet downwind. 42 wounded men. Most couldn't walk. 3,000 men slept in barracks 300 yards away. If 87,000 gallons exploded, burning fuel would spray across the depot. Cole saw the flame at 11:46 and 20 seconds. It was small, barely visible against the dark concrete, but he recognized the pattern. Blue color meant gasoline, linear movement meant vapor trail, direction meant tank number 4. He calculated. Distance, 40 feet. Flame speed, 4 feet per second. Time to impact, 10 seconds. The foam system needed 90 seconds to activate. The fire team was at the north perimeter, 2 minutes away at a run. There was no time for protocol. There was no time for anything except stopping the flame before it reached the valve. Havoc smelled it first. His head snapped toward the flame. His body locked. Every muscle tensed. The leash went taut. Havoc pulled against the leash. The force was different from normal tension. This was full body weight, 90 pounds of muscle driving forward. The leash stretched. The leather creaked. His nose dropped to the concrete. He was tracking the vapor trail. His nostrils flared. Short, rapid breaths. The pattern Cole had seen during leak detection drills. But faster, more urgent. Havoc made a sound, not a bark. A whine, high-pitched, tight. The sound meant conflict. The dog's training said, stay behind the red line. The dog's conditioning said, respond to the leak. Cole made a fist. The hand signal for stay. Havoc froze for 1 second. His body vibrated. Muscles locked but trembling. His eyes stayed fixed on the flame. The flame moved. It was 25 feet from the valve, then 20 feet. The wind from the valley pushed vapor ahead of the visible fire. The actual ignition zone was moving faster than the flame line showed. Havoc lunged forward. Cole pulled back. The leash went taut again. The dog's front paws left the ground for a moment, then slammed back down. He lunged again. Soldiers near the perimeter heard the commotion. Private First Class Morales turned. He saw the flame. He saw the dog pulling. He started moving toward the fire station. Corporal Jenkins was closer. He saw the blue line racing across the concrete. He understood what it meant. He started running toward tank number 4. Neither man would reach the valve in time. Havoc pulled again. This time the leash slipped through Cole's glove. He grabbed it with both hands. The leather was wet from melted snow and sweat. His grip held, but his hands were shaking. The dog's body was rigid, every muscle engaged. His breathing was fast, almost panting, but not from exertion, from tension. The physical expression of two incompatible commands colliding inside conditioning that had no protocol for this situation. Cole knew the regulation. He knew the penalty. He also knew the math. The flame was 15 feet from the valve. At 4 feet per second, impact in 4 seconds. The fire team was 90 seconds away. The foam system was offline for maintenance. His hands were cramping from holding the leash. The leather cut into his palms even through the gloves. Havoc pulled again. The dog's claws scraped concrete. He was pulling so hard his front legs were sliding. Cole felt the leash starting to tear. The stitching where the lead attached to the collar loop. It was old leather, damp, weakened by 8 months of daily use. He could feel the fibers separating. The flame was 12 feet from the valve. 3 seconds to impact. Havoc pulled. The stitching tore, not all at once, thread by thread. Cole felt each one snap through the leash. The leash broke at 11:47 p.m. The sound was sharp, leather and thread separating under tension. The broken end whipped through Cole's hands. He grabbed for it, missed. Havoc launched forward, 4 legs driving, low posture, head down, the running form he'd been trained to use in detection sweeps. But faster, desperate. Cole shouted the recall command. The word came out wrong, too loud, too sharp. Havoc didn't respond. He was already 10 feet past the red line. The distance was 20 feet. Concrete, mud, shallow puddles of water mixed with gasoline. Havoc's paws splashed through the film. Each step kicked up droplets that caught the light from the work lamps. The flame was 8 feet from the valve. Havoc was 15 feet from the valve. The dog was running faster than the flame was spreading, but not by much. Cole ran after him. 3 steps, then stopped. The regulation was absolute. If the handler crossed the red line during active fire, the violation meant court-martial. If the handler crossed and died, it meant nothing changed. Someone else would take his place. He stood at the red line and watched Havoc run toward the fire. The dog covered the distance in 4 seconds. His nose stayed low. He was tracking the vapor trail the way he'd been trained to track leak sources. Find the origin point. Alert at the source. The conditioning was automatic, but the source was a moving line of flame. Havoc reached the valve assembly. It was a standard emergency shutoff, a large wheel valve with a rubber pull handle extension. The extension was required on all fuel depot valves. It allowed workers wearing heavy gloves to operate the valve quickly. It hung down 18 inches from the wheel. Red rubber, visible in low light. The training had included valve work, not emergency valves. Training valves. Dry pipes with practice handles. The drill was simple. Grab the handle, pull until it disengages from the lock position, let the handler complete the turn. The conditioning was meant to give dogs a role in leak containment. Pull the alarm handle, pull the shutoff handle, alert and assist. Havoc had done the drill 60 times, always with Cole standing beside him, always with dry pipes, always with no fire. The flame was 4 feet from the valve. Havoc grabbed the rubber handle with his teeth. He pulled. The handle didn't move. It was locked in place by a safety pin, a small metal rod that prevented accidental activation. The flame was 3 feet away. Heat radiated from the concrete. Havoc's fur began to smoke, not burning yet, just heat damage. The smell was immediate, sharp, organic, wrong. Havoc pulled harder. The safety pin held. He adjusted his grip, deeper, more of the handle in his mouth. He planted his back legs and pulled with his full body weight. 90 pounds of force. The pin sheared. The handle released. Havoc pulled again. The valve wheel turned 15 degrees. Not enough to stop flow, but enough to reduce pressure. The flame reached the valve housing. It touched the metal. The heat increased. Havoc pulled a third time. The wheel turned another 15 degrees, 30 degrees total. Flow pressure dropped by 40%. The flame lost speed. It was still burning, still moving toward the main fuel line, but slower. The reduced pressure meant less vapor. Less vapor meant smaller flame. A tongue of fire touched Havoc's right flank. The fur ignited. The smell changed, burning hair, skin. Havoc made a sound, short, sharp, not quite a yelp. He held the handle, pulled again. The valve turned to 45 degrees. Flow pressure dropped to half. The flame height decreased. It was still dangerous, still moving, but containable now. Morales reached the valve. He had a wrench. He pushed Havoc aside, not rough, but firm. He fitted the wrench to the valve wheel and turned it the rest of the way. 90 degrees. Full closure. Flow stopped. Jenkins arrived with a shovel. He scraped sand from the drainage channel and threw it on the flame line. The sand smothered the vapor. The flame went out section by section. 12 seconds from full burn to complete extinguishment. Havoc backed away from the valve. He was limping. His right rear leg wasn't bearing full weight. The fur on his right flank was charred black. Patches of skin showed through, red, blistered. Cole reached him. His hands were shaking. He touched Havoc's head. The dog leaned into the touch. His breathing was fast. His eyes were dilated, but he was standing. Morales checked the valve closure. It was tight, no residual flow. He looked at the broken flame line. The sand had done its job. No active fire remained. Jenkins kicked more sand over the wet spots where gasoline had pooled. The sand absorbed the fuel. He marked the area with a piece of white chalk, the standard indicator for contaminated ground that needed cleanup. The flame line had reached within 18 inches of tank number 4's main connection point. If it had gone another 2 feet, the heat would have compromised the seal. Spray, ignition, explosion. Havoc sat down. His right flank was visible in the work light. The burn covered an area roughly 8 inches by 6 inches, 2nd degree at minimum. The fur was gone. The skin was red and weeping. Cole knelt beside him. He pulled off his gloves. His hands were steadier now. He touched the unburned part of Havoc's neck. The dog licked his hand, once. The gesture was mechanical, trained response, but the eye contact was something else. Soldiers gathered at the perimeter, 8 men, then 12. They stood quiet. Nobody spoke. They'd seen what happened. They'd seen the dog cross the red line. They'd seen him grab the valve. They'd seen him burn. Jenkins turned to the group. His voice was low but clear. He said 4 words. The dog saved everything. The barracks were intact. The medical tent was intact. The supply trucks were intact. 3,000 men were still asleep. None of them knew how close they'd come. The radio crackled, command post asking for status report. Cole stood. He walked to the communications box mounted on the nearest support post. He pressed the transmit key. Fire contained. No casualties. No structural damage. The voice on the radio asked about the perimeter breach. Someone had seen movement across the red line. Someone had reported a K9 asset in the hot zone. Cole looked at Havoc. The dog was still sitting, still watching him. The burn on his flank reflected the work lights. Cole pressed the transmit key again. Dog acted independently. Handler maintained position. Silence on the channel. 5 seconds. 10 seconds. The voice came back. Different tone. Formal. Handler and K9 asset report to headquarters immediately. Cole arrived at headquarters at 02:20 hours. Havoc walked beside him. The dog was limping but steady. The burn on his flank had been wrapped in gauze by a medic at the depot. The white bandage stood out against dark fur. Captain McNeil was waiting. 3 other officers sat at a field table. 2 majors. 1 lieutenant colonel. Their faces were neutral, professional. A veterinary corpsman examined Havoc in the corner. He unwrapped the gauze, checked the burn, rewrapped it. He wrote notes on a clipboard. McNeil spoke first. His voice was flat. Sergeant Cole, you lost control of your K9 asset during active fire conditions. Cole stood at attention. Yes, sir. McNeil read from a document. Section 7, paragraph 3 of the K9 Operations Manual. No animal crosses the safety line during fire. Violation results in immediate removal from handler duties and court-martial proceedings. He read Section 12, paragraph 8. Handlers are responsible for all actions taken by assigned K9 assets. Loss of control constitutes negligence. He read Section 19, paragraph 2. K9 assets that demonstrate unpredictable behavior in emergency situations may be retired from service or humanely destroyed. Cole listened. His hands were at his sides. His throat was dry. McNeil asked if Cole had anything to say in his defense. Cole said he took full responsibility. The leash failed. He should have inspected it more carefully. The dog acted on conditioning, not on command. One of the majors asked if Cole had given any signal that might have triggered the response. Cole said no. He'd given the stay command. Havoc had disobeyed. The lieutenant colonel asked for witness statements. Morales entered. He'd been waiting outside. He described what he saw. The flame. The dog crossing the line. The valve pull. He said the dog had executed the action faster than any human could have reached the valve. Without the dog, we'd all be dead, sir. Jenkins entered next. He corroborated Morales' account. He added detail about the flame speed and the valve closure timing. The dog had reduced flow pressure enough for them to complete the shutoff. Sir, without that dog, the entire depot would have burned. McNeil asked about casualties. 0. Structural damage. 0. Fuel loss. Approximately 12 gallons. Contained and absorbed. The officers conferred quietly. Cole watched Havoc. The dog sat calmly, tail down, ears neutral. He looked tired. One of the majors asked about the dog's training record. The veterinary corpsman provided a file. 17 successful leak detections in 8 months. 0 false alerts. The lieutenant colonel asked about behavior history. Any prior disobedience. Any aggression. Any unpredictability. The corpsman said no. Havoc's record was clean. The dog had never broken a command before. McNeil stood. He walked to where Havoc sat. He knelt down. He touched the dog's head. Havoc didn't move. McNeil looked at the bandaged flank. He looked at Cole. They were making an exception. One time, the dog had violated protocol, but the dog had also prevented a catastrophe. The violation would be noted in the record. No further action would be taken against the animal. Cole would receive a formal reprimand for failure to maintain control. The reprimand would be placed in his service file, but he would retain his handler assignment. McNeil stood. The depot is still standing because of what that dog did. Don't let it happen again. By December 20th, every unit within 10 miles of Liège had heard about the dog that pulled a fuel valve. The story spread through morning briefings, mess hall conversations, supply run gossip. Engineers at the depot examined the valve Havoc had operated. They measured the pull force required to disengage the safety pin, 47 pounds. They measured the torque required to turn the wheel from locked position, 63 foot-pounds for initial break, less after movement started. They wrote a technical report. Subject, K9 emergency response capability. They included diagrams, pull force vectors, valve operation mechanics. They noted that a 90-pound dog could generate sufficient force to operate standard emergency shutoffs if properly trained. The report included a recommendation. Modify all fuel depot valves to include longer handle extensions. 18 inches was current standard. Recommendation, 24 inches. Reason, improved accessibility for emergency response personnel and K9 assets. By January 1945, Quartermaster Corps issued a provisional directive, K9 Emergency Response Protocol. It authorized handlers to train dogs on valve operation during leak detection drills. It specified which valve types were appropriate for K9 operation. It outlined safety parameters. The directive was classified as provisional. It wasn't official policy. It was a field experiment, but it was documented, and it was distributed. Handlers at other depots read the directive. Some dismissed it. Dogs were sensors. Dogs weren't supposed to operate equipment, but others started training. They used practice valves, dry systems, no pressure, no risk. The training was simple. Same principle Havoc had been taught. Grab handle, pull, release. Let the handler complete the operation. But now the training was intentional. Now it was protocol. Soldiers talked about the incident in the mess halls. Morales told the story at least 20 times. He added details each time. The sound of the leash breaking, the way the dog ran low to the ground, the moment the flame touched fur. Jenkins told his own version. He focused on the valve mechanics, the way Havoc had adjusted his grip after the first pull failed, the way the dog had held on even after the fire touched him. By February, the story had reached other theaters, North Africa, Italy, the Pacific. Handlers compared notes. Some reported similar incidents, dogs that had pulled emergency equipment during fires or chemical leaks. The incidents were rare, but they'd happened. K9 training programs added active response modules. Dogs were taught to operate shutoff valves, emergency releases, alarm pulls. The training was limited, specific, but it was real. The change was gradual. Dogs went from pure detection assets to response assets. They still alerted to leaks, but now they could also stop leaks. They still detected fire, but now they could also help contain fire. The German forces never knew about Havoc. They never knew about the fire at Forward Fuel Depot 7. The depot kept supplying Patton's Third Army. The trucks kept running. The tanks kept moving. But the men who worked at the depot knew. They knew they'd come within 2 feet of losing everything. They knew a dog had crossed a red line and saved them. The K9 manual was revised in March 1945. The revision was quiet. No announcement, no formal notice. The new edition included Section 7, Paragraph 3, Subsection D, Emergency Active Response Protocol. It outlined when and how K9 assets could be used in direct containment actions during fuel emergencies. The subsection mentioned no specific incident. It cited no case study, but handlers who read it knew where it came from. They called it the Havoc Protocol. The name never appeared in official documents, but it appeared in training materials, in handler notes, in conversations between crews. Havoc became a reference point, not a legend, not a hero, a reference point. When handlers discussed K9 capabilities, they mentioned what happened at Liège. When engineers designed depot safety systems, they included K9 response in their planning. When training officers evaluated programs, they asked if dogs could perform active containment. The improvisation became standard practice, not universal, not mandatory, but documented, accepted, taught. Havoc continued working through April 1945. The burn on his flank healed in 6 weeks. The fur grew back thin and patchy. The skin underneath was pale pink. Scar tissue. Cole stayed as his handler. They worked at 3 different depots, Belgium, France, Germany after the advance. They detected 11 more leaks. None resulted in fire. None required emergency response. Havoc received a new collar in February. Leather, reinforced stitching, stronger than the one that had broken. Cole inspected it every morning. He checked the leash attachment point. He checked the buckle. He never mentioned why. They were reassigned to logistics support in May. After Germany surrendered, they moved to supply operations. Quieter work, routine inspections, No combat, no fire. The case inspired training modifications across the European theater. By June 1945, 17 K9 programs included valve operation drills. By August, 31 programs. The training spread to Pacific operations, then to stateside bases. Instructions were specific. Dogs learned to pull emergency handles, not complex operations. Just pull. The same motion they'd been taught for alarm systems, but now applied to fuel shutoffs, gas releases, pressure valves. Decades later, military museums referenced the incident. Display text mentioned a German Shepherd at a Belgian fuel depot in December 1944. Some included the name. Most didn't. The details were sparse. A dog pulled a valve. A fire was stopped. A depot was saved. Technical manuals carried the legacy. K9 operations handbooks included procedures derived from active response protocols developed in 1945. The procedures mentioned emergency containment. They mentioned valve operation. They didn't mention Havoc. Cole returned to Detroit in November 1945. He was discharged in December. He went back to fire department work. He rarely spoke about the war. When people asked, he mentioned logistics, fuel depot operations. Nothing specific. He remembered one thing clearly: the smell of burning fur, the sharp organic smell that had filled the air for those 18 seconds. He never forgot it. Havoc was retired from service in October 1945. He lived his final years at a kennel in New Jersey, the same county where he'd been selected in 1941. He died in April 1951. He was 10 years old. He was buried near the former training grounds at Fort Dix. No marker, no ceremony, just a grave in the section reserved for service animals. The broken leash was never recovered. It was left on the ground at the depot, probably thrown away during cleanup, or kept by someone as a souvenir. Either way, it disappeared, but what it represented remained. A line between obedience and survival, between following protocol and doing what needed to be done, between staying behind the red line and crossing it when everything depended on crossing. We honor legendary tales of courageous dogs who changed the course of battles in ways you'd never imagine. If that resonates with you, like this video and subscribe for more epic, creative, WE-inspired stories of bravery, loyalty, and surprising canine ingenuity.